I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead-zinc-silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic engineer gold mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at SpencerFernando.com. Welcome back to the show, Spencer.
Good to be here.
About a year after it happened, a suspect was arrested in connection with the murder of Marissa Shen, a 13-year-old girl in Burnaby, who was found in a very popular park not far from where a movie was being shot at the time. Anyway, we've now had the suspect in court, but a very disturbing incident took place outside the courthouse. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, there were people there protesting, and they were talking about the refugee system, criticisms of the government. And a woman in a hijab walked by and threw coffee at the people protesting and then walked away. And no one stopped her. The media didn't report on it much. And it's been getting a lot of attention on social media, though.
Uh-huh. Now, what kind of things are being said about it?
Well, one thing is people are saying the fact that there was a ton of media cameras there and everything, and then almost none of them showed the video, which is very interesting. And people made the point that if it had been reversed, if it had been, someone else walking by and throwing coffee at someone in a hijab, that would have been a huge story. Trudeau probably would have commented on it. The media would have been all over it. So it really seems like a double standard.
Vancouver police say they are investigating it as a possible assault. We haven't heard anything further on it since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because one of the people made, I think, one of the people who was hit right with the coffee, I think, went to the police and made a complaint. So they had to do something about it.
Now, the person who's been arrested in connection with this young woman's death is a Syrian refugee who, at the time of the offense, had been in Canada for 3 months. Has this put a lot of focus on the influx of Syrian refugees into Canada? I
think so. I mean, you have to think of the kind of attitude that's going on for someone like that. I mean, Canada gives him a place to be safe. We welcome him into the country, and then he's here for a few months, and he apparently goes and murders somebody. So that's pretty concerning. We keep getting told by the government how safe the system is. Oh, there's no problem with the people coming in, but it seems in this case, certainly there is a big problem.
Some critics of the system have said there's just not enough time to vet all these people. Is that true?
I think so. I mean, Trudeau basically made, and people forget, but at the time he made the promise, it was really an arbitrary number. He just wanted to pick a big number of refugees to bring in so he would look more quote-unquote compassionate than the other leaders. The problem is leaders are supposed to be compassionate to their own citizens, not to people in other countries. And so Trudeau wanted to look good, brought a bunch of people in too quickly, and now there's a price to be paid for it.
Do you think that's also raising concerns about all these people who are entering Canada illegally and claiming refugee status after entering from the United States?
Well, certainly. I mean, the other thing is that how many people are just crossing right into the country at a border crossing or outside of a border crossing where there's no police, no authorities or anything, right? The government has no idea how many people are coming in that way. We have no idea who those people are. And yeah, when you don't control your border and when you let people in from anywhere, you're going to have problems. I mean, you're seeing it in Europe, and it seems like Europe gives a good warning of what not to do. And yet Trudeau and, the left seem to just want to copy Europe and make the same mistakes.
Is that because once people are allowed in by a certain government, they're more likely to vote for that government if they become citizens?
Oh, for sure, yeah. I mean, a lot of, stats show that people generally vote for the party that let them in. So it's a disturbing incentive, right? There's an incentive for political parties to let people come in illegally and to bring in a bunch of people because they expect that those people will vote for them at some point if they become citizens. And that's a big concern. Our government's not supposed to bring people in to try to win votes. They're supposed to bring people in if they think it'll help grow the economy, strengthen the country. And that's definitely not what's happening with what the Liberals are doing.
With these overwhelming numbers of people entering illegally, what does that do to people who've legitimately put their names in and are being checked out by the system?
Well, it makes them have to wait longer. I mean, the government already had to admit, a government report admitted that the whole refugee system is basically breaking down because they don't have enough people. There's huge delays now for people using the legal process. So again, I mean, what kind of message does that send, right? The people who follow the rules and show respect for Canada by applying the right way are getting punished, and the people who disrespect the country by just crossing illegally are getting rewarded. So it's totally backwards, and it just sends a message to people that more people are just gonna keep trying to come illegally because that seems to be the way to get in.
When you say it sends a message, what about for Canadians who might need help from the government? Are they being put on the back burner while all this stuff is being looked after?
Well, certainly. I mean, the problem is the government has limited resources, right? There's not an unlimited amount of money. So any money spent on non-citizens and on illegal border crossers means it's money that's not spent on Canadians. So, the veterans get told they're asking for too much. Many Canadians are homeless. A lot of Canadians are in poverty. A lot of Indigenous communities are living in third world conditions. Those Canadians are not getting help, but we're helping people who enter the country illegally, which really, I mean, it's insane that happens. I mean, it's not technically traitorous, but it really feels like it because the government's supposed to serve Canadians, not people breaking the law and entering the country, right? If someone breaks the law and enters the country, then you have to deport them to whatever country they were from. You can't just let them come in, give them a bunch of money, give them jobs, give them welfare, give them education, all at taxpayers' expense, and then when Canadians need help, say, oh, sorry, no money for you.
Are the concerns of veterans being met?
I don't think so. I mean, and this is one area where, all parties have really failed. The Conservatives did not do a great job. The Liberals have done a bad job as well. And, there are still court cases going on, veterans still asking for support. And, it's the government talks a big game, just like the Conservatives and the Liberals. They both talk a big game about supporting veterans at election time. And then when it comes to actually helping them, they don't really do anything.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after the break.
I'm Greg Johnston, CEO of Carl Data Solutions, an industrial Internet of Things company that provides big data solutions for monitoring critical infrastructure. Carl Data offers machine learning and predictive analytics features through our cloud-based applications to deliver key asset-saving operational insights from massive amounts of data. Carl Data trades on the CSE symbol CRL and the pink symbol CDTAF. For more details on Carl Data, please visit carlsolutions.com.
Media recognition from Bloomberg, Reuters, Recycling Trade Publications. Patented process for 100% recovery of critical metals, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, aluminum. American Manganese is focused on recycling lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles. American Manganese trades on the TSX Venture, AMY, the US, AMYZF, and Frankfurt 2AM. For more information, visit AmericanManganeseInc.com or phone me, Larry Ray, at 778-574-4444.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, what do you know about this Liberal member of Trudeau's government switching sides in Ontario?
Yeah, well, she had said that the Trudeau government, basically, she had tried to bring up concerns about the economy, Canada's place in the world. She said it's never been worse than it is now. The economy is not good, and she really says that she was just ignored within the Liberal Party, and so she switched over. And her big issue is Leona Alislev. Her big issue is the economy, and she said that she tried bringing up concerns, didn't get discussed, doesn't think Trudeau has what it takes, doesn't think the Trudeau government is adapting to the changing world economy or the way politics is changing, and so she switched over to the Conservatives.
How big of a coup is that for Andrew Scheer's party?
It's pretty good. He's been obviously facing the momentum issue of having Maxime Bernier leave, and then the Liberals trying to get momentum as the session started. So to have someone leave the Liberals, go to him, I think that's a huge boost for him and the Conservatives, and the timing is great for them as well, right? Because any message the Liberals wanted to spread when the new parliamentary session started, that's where they've been wiped out, and the momentum now is with the Conservatives, who look like they're growing, they're bringing in new people. So it's big for him.
Maxime Bernier leaving the Conservatives. Will MPs that are in the Conservative Party now join his People's Party?
You can't be sure, but it doesn't look like any current Conservative MPs are switching. He had made a big announcement last Friday where he announced the name of the party and the logo, but no MPs joining then. So maybe it might change down the road, who knows, but it seems like for now there's nobody who's leaving.
What do you think of the name?
I mean, it's not a bad name. I mean, it's Doug Ford talked about the people a lot in his campaign. There was definitely a sense that, just regular Canadians are being ignored and just the elites are in power and just governing for the elites. So I think the name's not really bad at all. It's just going to be the infrastructure, right? He has to build a fundraising apparatus. He has to build, riding associations. He has to get people nominated. So it's a lot of work to put together a full political party if he intends. He says he's going to run people in all 338 ridings. So it's going to be a lot of work putting that together.
I've seen a lot of stuff online about people poking fun at People's Party of Canada because just about every other country that has a People's Party is a dictatorship. And thank goodness it's not a People's Democratic Party because they're usually the harshest regimes. If you take a look at East Germany or North Korea, and those were all People's Democratic Republics. So do you think with that kind of context, people say, oh, he wants a dictatorship? Do you think people might attach that?
Yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of talk about that, but I don't think that's going to be. I mean, I don't think anyone thinks, he's going to be a dictator. Our system doesn't really. I mean, the system gives a lot of power to a prime minister in a majority government, obviously, and Trudeau certainly acted in many ways like a dictator, but leaders still do face elections, and so there's always a chance to get people out. And we'll see what happens. But no, I don't think it's. I mean, he's about as far from socialist or communist as you can get. If you look at what he's talking about, libertarianism in a lot of ways is as far as you can get from that. So I don't think there's any real concern that he's a dictator in waiting.
When I interviewed Maxime, he seemed to be very much in favor of real free trade, no protectionism on anything, and letting the market decide what you should pay for, and let consumers enjoy the benefits of lower prices. Do you think that's something that he should emphasize?
Well, I think that's good for the most part. I do think there have to be some exceptions, though. For example, China. The idea of free trade with China, I think, is a terrible idea, and the reason is that China's not really an economy in the same way we are. I mean, they have state-owned companies. They're willing to put a whole bunch of government money towards building up production in one industry to lower world prices. Just dump products on the market to lower world prices, push private companies in other countries out of the market, and then once they get market dominance, they raise prices. They're state-owned companies also, so that's a big thing that's different. When you're dealing with a Chinese company, company headquartered in China, you're not necessarily dealing with a private company. You're dealing with the Communist Party of China when you look really at who's in control. So I think there do have to be some exceptions. Certain areas, for example, if there's production that's necessary for maintaining military independence, I think you have to have tariffs on that because you can't ever be dependent on another country for your military. And that's interesting with the steel tariffs in the U.S. People took exception to the states saying that it was a national security issue. But what they were saying is, in the case of a large war, if you don't have your own steel production, then you're dependent on other countries for the necessities of building tanks, building weapons, building airplanes. And that is a big national security problem if you don't have your own independence in the steel industry. So I think for the most part, getting rid of tariffs is good, but there do have to be some exceptions for national security and for dealing with a country like China.
Do you think Canada is much of a national security threat to the U.S. because it's our steel that got slapped with the tariffs?
I know, but the perspective of the states was that all steel that's not within their own country is a problem because they want total independence on steel. And if you have steel from another country, then they don't control production in Canada. So from their perspective, they needed to put tariffs on us. I disagree with that. I think the relationship between Canada and the States is close enough that they shouldn't have to worry that if they were ever in a tough situation that we would, make sure to help them out with steel. But, they're trying to put tariffs on everything. And the other concern they had was dumping. Steel is being dumped. China will sell steel to Canada and then call it Canadian steel and then try to sell it into the States to get around tariffs on steel from China. The Canadian government did take a few steps to reduce the threat of dumping from China, but the tariffs still seem to be applied. So I think the U.S. has gone a little far with tariffs. Tariffs on China make sense. Tariffs on Canada, not so much.
China just announced that it's putting $60 billion worth of tariffs on U.S. products that go into effect in about a week. Will there ever be an end to this tariff war? Plus, China said if the U.S. goes ahead with another $200 billion in tariffs against them, they'll just end trade talks with the U.S. and give up.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to keep escalating, which, to be honest, from the U.S. perspective, may have some short-term pain, but I think there is a logical case to be made for it. The U.S. has lost so much of their, industrial capacity to China, and they do need to get some of that back. And, a country that can't produce physical things for itself is not necessarily a country that has much security. And so if we all just depend on China to build everything, then we're really beholden to what China does. That's not a good situation to be in. And, it's definitely going to cause some economic pain in the U.S. because they're trying to reorient their economy that's been so much based on cheap products from China. But I do think it is a necessary step.
We'll have more with Spencer Fernando right after this.
Cypress Development Corp's flagship lithium project is located just east of Albemarle's Silver Peak mine in the heart of Clayton Valley, Nevada. A 12-hole exploration drill program for lithium-enriched claystone on Cypress's 100% controlled properties is now underway. Cypress Development Corp trades on the TSX Venture Exchange, symbol CYP, the Pink's CYDVF, and on Frankfurt's C1Z1. For more information, please visit our website, cypressdevelopmentcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Spencer Fernando. Spencer, speaking about trade, Chrystia Freeland, the Foreign Affairs Minister, attending an event that called Trump a tyrant as NAFTA talks continue. Was that a poor move?
Yeah, very poor move. I think it sends a concerning message, too, is that the Trudeau government is just concerned with scoring political points, not necessarily getting a deal. I mean, in today's world, if you go to an event like that, it's going to show up on YouTube right away. So to think that somehow it would fly under the radar makes no sense. And then, it's kind of the same elitist arrogance, right? Whenever, a populist wins an election, whatever country it is, it's a big threat to democracy and the only solution is to elect liberals again, right? That seems to be how they think. So whether people like Trump or not, he's not a tyrant. He was democratically elected and he'll have to face an election. He faces constraints from the Constitution, from the judiciary, from the Senate, the House. So to call him a tyrant is just not a logical move. And to send Freeland to that, again, it's all virtue signaling, right? Who cares about getting a deal as long as we can score some political points against Trump and get some votes in Canada? That's what matters, it seems.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford is using the notwithstanding clause to bring in a law to reduce the size of Toronto City Council. Some people have commented, why have a charter of rights and freedoms if politicians can override it?
Yeah, well, I think the notwithstanding clause is a good thing. I mean, its use is limited. You can only override a law for a certain amount of time. It only applies to certain sections. You can't just override everything in the charter, so it is a limited tool. And in the case of Ontario, I mean, if you look at the ruling made by the judge, it's a very political ruling. The judge never really said that, never made the case that Ford and the Ontario government don't have the authority to do what they did. Just said that he felt it would create too much confusion as the election gets close. So, not a good ruling. And that's the same judge who I think had ruled letting Omar Khadr keep his $10.5 million when the widow of the guy Khadr admitted to killing sued to try to stop it. So, the judiciary in Canada has in many ways been corrupted by the left, and it's interesting when conservatives get elected, they have to fight the media, they have to fight their opponents, and then they have to fight the courts all the time. So I think, good on Ford for actually fighting back instead of rolling over like a lot of other politicians would.
Is the reducing the size of Toronto City Council a good idea?
I think so. I mean, they're just aligning it to the MPPs in the area, so they're just moving to the same boundaries. I mean, Toronto has, right now, I think it's 47 city councilors. Los Angeles, a much larger city, has 15. So the idea that you need that many politicians for a city of that size doesn't really make sense.
The Canadian Armed Forces having problems recruiting people for the Air Force. What's behind that?
Yeah, they're about 17% short of the amount of pilots that they're supposed to have. They can't even really keep up every year with attrition. A big part is that there's not enough money for training and maintenance, not enough flying time, so there's burnout among people who are currently serving, and they're not going to have a new training system in place until 2021. The other problem I talked about is that who would really want to join the Air Force when the government doesn't want to get them new planes? I mean, the Conservatives were trying to get the F-35s. That was kind of a debacle. And now they're getting, old CF-18s to replace the old CF-18s from Australia. I mean, it's a joke, right? If the government doesn't show that they want to give Canadian pilots the newest and the best planes, why would anyone want to sign up to fight for the Air Force? I mean, it's just, if the government's not going to support you, why would anyone want to do it?
Do you wonder why the Canadian government didn't just purchase Super Hornets so that all the mechanics and pilots and so on would be familiar with the Hornet? The only difference is the Super Hornet's a bit bigger, a bit faster, and can carry more and is more fuel efficient.
Yeah, I think Super Hornets would have been a pretty good, way to bridge the gap between the current planes and then whatever new planes they get. But again, it's amazing. If you look at just the way that, just the total incompetence of the whole procurement system and really the whole way the armed forces has been managed politically in Canada. I mean, it's a joke. It's embarrassing. I mean, we have, the military's tiny itself. New ships are always delayed, always go over budget. They can't even buy. I mean, the Conservatives had 8 years to try to buy planes. They couldn't do it. The Liberals can't do it. They can't build up the military. Now they're imposing random, arbitrary diversity quotas. They're now saying, diversity is strength in the military. We need 25% women for some reason in the military. That's their arbitrary target that they're trying and failing to reach. So it's all really being treated as it's like a social experiment now to the people in charge. And it's very dangerous. I mean, the military is supposed to be about defending the country, which means it needs the best people, it needs the best equipment, it needs the best support, and it doesn't even get close to that.
Back in the 80s, the Canadian Armed Forces were the best paid armed forces in the world. Now I hear stories where privates have to go to welfare to make sure their families are looked after. Is that true?
Well, yeah, in a lot of cases, people are not being paid well, and veterans who serve. I mean, I think Canada has, the best, and if you look at the numbers, actually, it bears out. Canada has, soldier per soldier, we have the best people in the world. But the government's really putting that at risk because they're imposing arbitrary quotas, they're underfunding it, they're not giving people the support they need. So, it's how long is it going to last as, a force that is effective? It's effective in small numbers because we only have small numbers. But the other problem is, especially if you look at the Air Force and the Navy, Canada is a huge country. There's lots of land to cover. There's lots of, oceans to protect. So we need a pretty effective Navy and we need a pretty effective Air Force, and we have neither of that at this point. And again, people see how veterans get treated. People see what happens to people in the military. So why would someone want to sign up when they see that the government promises one thing, you go over, you serve, you get injured, and then the government doesn't do what they promised? I mean, there's no incentive really for people to join at this point.
Also, I take a look, if they're going to buy the F-35, that's not an aircraft suitable for patrolling the Arctic because it's a single-engine aircraft. And if you lose an engine up there, you only survive a few minutes if you hit the water. Why would they go for an airplane with a single engine?
Yeah, I mean, it might not be the best choice. It is the most advanced plane, but the single engine could be an area of concern. I think, we need to get whatever plane is best for the country. In some cases, that'll be the F-35. Then they'll need to get some maybe to use more in the Arctic areas. But I think a bigger problem is that we don't have our own domestic industry. I mean, why are we reliant on other countries to design, airplanes? We're an advanced country. We have a lot of resources. We have a pretty well-educated population. We should be able to build up our own defense industry and start designing some of our own planes. And I think that's the direction we should be looking at.
Spencer, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Good to be here.
My guest has been investigative reporter Spencer Fernando. You can find his articles at spencerfernando.com. You're listening to the Goddard Report on TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Find us on Twitter at TalkDigitalNet. Questions for the show or our guests can be sent to info@HowStreet.com. Our popular YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of Howe Street Media Incorporated.